Why is the conveyancing process broken in 2025? Today I'm joined by Sally Holdway, who is a solicitor, and she's here to talk to me about why it's taking 19 weeks on average to get a sale through to exchange and completion. Sally, why is conveyancing so bust in 2025? Talk to me.
That's such a good question, isn't it? Why is that the case? So when I qualified as a solicitor, which was pointed out to me recently was actually in the last century, brutal but true. I used
You
to
obviously started as a child.
you say all the right things. But I used to quite happily, on a Friday be trotting around with the piles of title deeds and the client account checks, doing all those very paper-heavy completions. But we were regularly getting the deals done within 6 to 8 weeks then. So
8 weeks was considered a long time.
it was, wasn't it? Yes, absolutely. Yes, I would be told off by my local estate agents if it was 8 weeks. So it leads to the question, why do we find ourselves in this situation where it's 2, 3, 4 times longer than that to get to completion these days? My first comment would be it's not the conveyancer's fault. I think more often than not, it can be easy to blame conveyancers for the kind of the slippage in the timescales. But conveyancers are a very hard-working bunch, and there's lots of other factors which is making it super tricky for them to get deals done faster. The first thing I'd say is that there's a lot more to do. Conveyancing has got a lot more complicated since I qualified as a solicitor. Obviously, things like the Building Safety Act, issues we have with both leasehold and estate freeholds now, where we commonly will require deeds of variation, means that the lawyers are doing a lot more work than they used to. I think there's a couple of other factors as well to look at. First off, getting good conveyancers is a tricky thing to find these days. Many left the profession after the financial crash of 2008. And the same again after the stamp duty holiday came to an end during COVID. It's a really tough gig and not worth it for many people, not worth the stress. And then we also have the challenge that obviously the industry has evolved over the course of the last 20 years or so. We have referral fees and panel managers, which has meant that lawyers have had to get really super competitive on fees and have to do things in a very lean way. And sometimes that can affect service levels as well. The lawyers will always focus on making sure they've done the legal work to an exceptional standard. Returning phone calls might go further down the list. So I think if you combine all of those elements, it means that we find ourselves somewhat in this perfect storm of having to wait 5 months to get completions through from offer accepted.
Before we talk about what the governments and other people can do to solve this, surely it's the industry's fault, as in the conveyancing industry, that they've allowed themselves for their pants to be pulled down on their fees. And the fact is that the panel managers taking a percentage of the fee, and estate agents are taking a percentage of the fee. I mean, I've heard some shocking numbers where, if someone walked into an office, they'd be charged £750. But if it went through a estate agents, it would be £1,400, of which 450 went to the conveyancer and the rest went to the panel and the solicitor and the agent as a kickback.
Yes, and absolutely. I think referral fees again probably started out at £50, £100, but have only gone in one direction over the years. Are lawyers to blame? It's been really tricky, I think, for lawyers to differentiate the service they're providing apart from on price. It's the first thing that we'll go to, and I was guilty of that when I was a practicing solicitor. And someone would ring me up for a quote and say, "Oh, I can get it cheaper down the road." The gut instinct is, "Okay, well, I'll knock 50 quid off the bill." It doesn't do anyone any favours. I think we do need a bit of re-education in the conveyancing sector, but the reality is we now find ourselves in an industry which really has kind of two sides to the same coin, doesn't it? We have work that goes through referral fee channels, and really lawyers are very much out of control there with regards to dictating what the fees will be. The fees will be what they're told. And then we have the other side of the profession who, generally speaking, won't engage in referral fees and will have their own fee structures.
Well, let's not talk about those because they're in control, and I love that. But I can name on 2 fingers the number of solicitors. You're one of them, and the other firm is Thomas Legal, who have actually got proactively. I like that.
Actively, proactively.
Yeah, going out there, building up personal brands, attracting agents to them.
Yeah.
You know,
It's not, can I just say it's not our skill set? So the 7 years it takes to qualify as a solicitor, you don't do a business development module. You spend all of your time looking at the letter of the law, pretty much. So it's not really naturally in our DNA to be going out there and being natural salespeople, I think, which again has caused obviously has caused challenges with regards to what we've just been talking about around fees.
do you think tomorrow, if tomorrow referral fees were banned, would that change anything?
I don't think it would do any harm. Potentially a bit of a controversial view, and I'm a realist and a pragmatist. You know, that's not the world that we operate in. But I don't see that if we are actively looking to be improving the consumer experience of moving house, that referral fees actually add anything. It's just another layer of additional costs which has to be factored in. But ultimately, that comes off the bottom line of the lawyers.
I mean, if you talk or watch social media on estate agents, one of the big issues is the power of right move and the fact that they're being shafted with regard. Is this conversation being had amongst conveyancers online?
I assume you mean in the context not of right move, but with regards to panel management.
Yes.
I think absolutely, I would say the profession is kind of 50-50 down the line with regards to those that will actively embrace those types of business relationships. And they work very successfully for lots of large firms versus those who it's very much Marmite, who will not touch referral fees with a barge pole. I would have to say, you know, I think in many ways solicitors do have a bit more flexibility to choose whether they want to engage with that or not. Rightmove's pretty ubiquitous for estate agents, isn't it? It's tricky to turn away from Rightmove.
Because that 50-50 surprised me, but
Yeah. It's probably not the exact figures, but there or thereabouts. So
I know the government are looking at this. Before we do that, what can estate agents do to improve the conveyancing process?
well, there's lots of things really, aren't there? I think again, I find it's rare, not exceptional, but it is rare that you will find where you are paying high referral fees, you also get those really great levels of service. Many of the estate agents we speak to will say, well, we have an arrangement in place where we get paid a referral fee, but actually our favourite lawyer is the one that's around the corner we've worked with for donkey's years, but we don't get any referral fees from there. So there's a choice, isn't there, I think, and expecting the exceptional levels of service when the fees are very low under panel arrangements. You know, it's the definition of madness, isn't it? Keep doing the same thing, expect a different outcome. Take a look at all estate agents, I would say, have solicitors that they know, like and trust to deal with cases. They're the ones that you should be fostering the relationships with.
I know we're going to come on to this in a little bit in a separate video, but what can agents do with material information and getting exchange readies listings?
Yeah, so for me, material information is really it's a great excuse to start to be moving the dial on the conveyancing experience. It's an excuse for estate agents to be really on the front foot and look beyond just the material information requirements, which we're all having to grapple with now under the new trading standards guidance and the changes that are coming this year as well with regards to the CMA. But if you look at the list, we now have the list, right, which is on the last page of the trading standards guidance, the 22 new areas which estate agents need to be covering off in their property listings. Using the good old Venn diagram analogy, there is a huge overlap with what I would have traditionally described as conveyancing information, the stuff that I would have been pulling together in the initial stages of a transaction. And certainly a lot of the estate agents that we're working with are saying, okay, well, if we do material information, we may as well be doing contract ready. There's various, I think, descriptions of what do we mean by contract ready, but it seems to be evolving that effectively the estate agents will be on the front foot, whether they're doing it themselves, whether they're working with lawyers and getting them instructed earlier, but getting all of the contract documentation in place at the point the property goes on the market rather than waiting until the point of offer.
What can the government do to help?
What can the government do? Well, there was a call for evidence, wasn't there? If we can cast our minds back to 2017, where the government absolutely asked this question to the industry, what should we be doing? And what seemed to come back loud and clear from that consultation was potentially to be looking at referral fees, not necessarily getting rid of them, but possibly to be making sure that they were regulated more closely. But specifically, this concept of upfront information came to the fore, which obviously we now talk about in the context of material information. But at that point, the government decided, okay, well, the industry's come up with these great ideas, off you go, and you sort it out. And really did very little so far as intervention was concerned at that stage. We didn't really make a huge amount of progress as an industry. I think us lawyers are naturally quite change averse, and quite rightly. Unless we've got specific rules to follow, then it can be very tricky for us to deviate away from the conveyancing protocol that we would usually work to. And similarly for estate agents. Why would we change? What are the risks? How's that going to impact profitability? So we've not really seen significant changes since that 27 consultation. But what we did have is not regulation by the back door, because it's regulation that we've always had, right, which is the consumer protection regulations, going back to what we've been talking about around material information, and just being much clearer on the information that should be provided up front. So the government kind of covertly have been doing a little bit of work there by through the trading standard route and being clearer on what needs to happen to be promote material information, which then ticks the box so far as the upfront information is concerned. But it's looking like we've had a raft of announcements since the new year from the government that they're going to be taking the new Labour government taking a much more proactive approach, we think. Not least, they have announced a 12-week digital protocol project, which is just about to be kicked off, looking at how can we digitise the process much more effectively. So not only are we doing things earlier in the process, but we're also passing that through from very beginning, the point a property goes on the market, all the way through to post-completion.
It all sounds very good, Sally, but it seems that material information and this policing of it, no one seems to be doing it.
We're on a bit of a roller coaster, aren't we, really? What do they say in the X Factor? We're on a material information journey, right? And certainly we saw a flurry of activity this time last year, just after the guidance was issued. I think it was on the 30th of November 2023.
And we're filming this in early Feb 25.
And certainly many estate agents were then looking to make sure that they were being compliant with the new rules. We also saw some quite significant changes over the summer last year with regards to the portal's approach to this. So they've obviously now changed the format of how their listings look to be including these new fields. We have to now be including if there's a connection to utilities, are there restrictions affecting the property, and so on and so forth, which just weren't there this time last year. And certainly there was an awful lot of communication from trading standards, once again this time last year, with regards to what their expectations were from estate agents. Having said that, there's not been really any enforcement. I think trading standards have been clear that it's very much a carrot rather than a stick. These are new rules that we need to be getting on top of. But the challenge with that is you're quite right. I think because there's a lack of visible enforcement, many estate agents are taking the view this is actually quite a lot of information. It's challenging to get hold of it in a format that we can trust. So we're just going to park it for now. And I think that's where we find ourselves sitting today. What it's looking like, though, as I say, another avenue which the government has gone down is looking at how we're going to be able to enforce things moving forwards. And the new Digital Markets Competition and Consumer Act, which snuck in under the radar just before the elections last year, is now starting to be enforced. And it's looking like from late spring this year, the CMA, the Competitions and Market Authority, along with trading standards, is going to have powers to enforce the material information rules. And the difference there being they're going to have, it's looking like, direct enforcement powers, which has been tricky for trading standards. They normally need a court order before they can wrap someone over the knuckles. So I think we can probably expect from the middle of this year to see more enforcement moving forwards of material information.
Thank you for your time today. Put your comments in the post on anything you feel is relevant to this. I look forward to answering your replies. Thank you for your time today, Sam.
Thanks.